Good morning and welcome to Brookmount's earnings call. I'm Ioannis, Head of Investor Relations and Executive Director, and I'll be your host for today's call. During today's call, we will discuss our financial performance for 2022, highlight key operation and strategical achievements, and provide an outlook for the future. Following our prepared remarks, we will open the call for questions from the investment community. With that said, I will now turn the call to Neil Solquist, CEO and Executive Director of Brookmount Gold, to discuss our financial performance and key achievements. Thank you again for joining today. Niels.
Thanks, Ioannis. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I should introduce myself, Neil Solquist, CEO. And we've had a number of conferences before, and this conference has been put together to discuss our 2022 result, which was I think in line with our expectations. We were up about 14% in terms of revenue for the year. And Ioannis, if you could just put some of the statistics on the screen for me. Thank you. We produced just over 9,000 ounces of gold, which is up by about 16.2% on last year. Sales of 16.3 million and a gross profit around 7.5. The profitability for the year has been very, very pleasing. During the year, we continued in Talawan to exploit the very high-grade ore seam, which has been running across the top of our property, and we've been mining for about over 18 months now. So during the last month, during the last quarter, which is the rainy season in Indonesia, we actually changed our drilling strategy into looking for high-grade seams elsewhere in the property in areas that we felt had very good potential, because at some point the seam that we've been working will be running out, or the ore grades will start to decline. So we wanted to maintain the cash flow trajectory out of Talawan, which is important for the business moving forward. Most importantly, the operational side has been performing. We have invested quite a bit in restructuring our infrastructure there. We rebuilt our processing tanks, a total of 5 processing tanks, added a number of additional ball mills or crushers, and relined our tailing ponds. So we spent a fair bit of money on building the PP&E or fixed assets, and that's reflected in the balance sheet. Also, we increased inventory by about 30% over the year because the gold price has been increasing towards the end of the year, and it was felt it was a good time to keep some in inventory until the beginning of this year, in expectation of higher prices. So overall, I think we can be very happy with the year. We are, of course, looking forward to 2023 for a number of reasons. You will be familiar with the fact that we announced a strategic acquisition or merger, if you will, recently in Brazil, which is a very sizable project and which has some very strategic and highly qualified people behind it who will be joining our board. And that we see as a major boost for our expansion and our geographic diversification, which we've been talking about in our recent calls and our recent investor relations outreach program. Our strategy has always been that we started the business in Indonesia, which is a developing country, but we have a very strong business there. But we felt that being a US corporation and being a global gold platform would be a far more attractive investment opportunity for our community over the next couple of years. So we started with with Canada, which you will recall, Moosehorn, and recently, about the middle of last year, we signed a transaction to acquire acreage in Alaska, in McArthur Creek, and of course now Brazil. So we have a lot on our plate, and I think the strategy is to bring 2 of those operating assets into production as quickly as possible. Both of them are relatively close to production, both Moosehorn and McArthur Creek. They have what they call low-hanging fruit, which is a lot of surface gold and low-depth gold, which can be extracted and processed with equipment on site. So that is something that we'll be looking at kicking off in the second quarter and moving forward. From a strategic point of view, I've talked about what we're doing in terms of expanding the production platform to diversify away from Indonesia. On the financial side, of course, we have been talking about listing, where we are listed at the moment in the OTC. We are actually one of the highest traded volume stocks on the OTC. And we have talked in the past about looking to Nasdaq and or New York Stock Exchange, particularly New York Stock Exchange second board, which we had mentioned on a couple of occasions in the past. We're now in discussions with Nasdaq on the future listing potential of the company. And this, of course, getting back to the financial platform, all is derived from the audit. And a lot of questions have been asked over the past year, the status of the audit. I think Ioannis, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we foreshadowed recently that we would be completing by the end of March, which is still on track. In fact, I have just scheduled a site visit to Indonesia, to Talawan, with our auditor, and that will be around the 20th of this month. So we're hoping that was in fact one of the last cabs on the rank in terms of the audit process. And that being the case, then we'll be on track in terms of the timing. That drives our business in more ways than you can imagine. Getting to transition from the OTC onto a recognized exchange, particularly an exchange like Nasdaq, would be a very major step for us. Firstly, because when the audit's completed, we file a registration statement, become a fully reporting company with the SEC, and also file for listing at the same time, and a fundraising which would be used to assist with the acquisitions and the development strategy that we have in place at the moment. So that is key to our business going forward. And I think that I believe that we'll have a lot of progress in that area in the next few months. Our plan would be that we would like to be moving down the listing road by the end of the second quarter, given that the audit will be completed. And I think that would be very important for our investor base, given that I believe we had an independent research report which came out with a projected stock price, which would be a price that would only be achievable really in a listed situation. So all of these issues are coming together, I think, at a good time. It's a lot of work. The management is laser focused on getting past this period and delivering results. I think that Ioannis is doing an excellent job in terms of creating a communication platform for our shareholders, both directly through our own website, through Twitter, through various social media platforms, most importantly, to deliver messages as we make achievements, as we tick off targets. We tell people exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it, and keep them apprised of where we are and where we're heading. And I think that is the ultimate objective as we're operating a public company. Brazil is a very major move for us. It's a significant development for the company, and I think the quality of that project, the quality of the existing assets, the fact that it has a reasonable amount of ore which is waiting to be processed, all of this points towards the fact that we will be able to be supplementing our operating earnings from Indonesia with our other acquisitions in North America and South America.
I'm going to stop you here. We start having a couple of questions
Yes, sure.
So can we start addressing them so we remain relevant to the topic? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just see what we have here. Yes, there was a question which relates to the fact that our revenue in the fourth quarter was sequentially down on the corresponding quarter in 2020 and 2020, which is a couple of reasons. Firstly, it is seasonal in Indonesia, and it has been the rainy season, and that tends to cut back on mining operations generally, but more specifically, as I'd mentioned earlier, when the very high grade ore seam which we've been exploiting, we feel, the geologists feel that it's coming to its end, and we want to make sure that we can replace that high grade seam relatively quickly, seamlessly, and so we've been allocating a lot of drill resources into that new area which we're exploring, and that meant less time or less focus on the existing areas which we've been exploiting. So that was, to a certain extent, it's something that we're doing for our own benefit, but it did have a slightly negative impact on the fourth quarter, which nevertheless was overcome by the performance of the previous three quarters. So on an annual basis, we were still up by something like 16%. However, the fourth quarter was in fact down on the corresponding quarter for the previous year. There is another question here which I will address. Yes, that's absolutely correct. The inventory was increased because of the belief that gold prices were heading north, and a larger portion of stock was unsold at the end of the year than previously for that reason. So hopefully those questions are addressed. I think that was the last question. Yes.
There's an additional question.
There is another one that just came up. Yes, you're right.
And also, if you have any additional questions, please, you can find a section below at your screen, and you can just type all your questions there.
Sure. The relationship with GeoBlocks, I think that's a little bit specific, but GeoBlocks is the company that we have contracted with to acquire the interest in Brazil. Our relationship with GeoBlocks is obviously very positive. We work very well together, and I believe that ultimately we'll both benefit enormously from participation in this project. So that's the general answer I can give you at this point. We have, you help me out here, Johannes, is that it? No, I think
we don't have any more questions at the moment.
No more questions right now. So I think rather than a narrative, I think we've encompassed most of what we wanted to say. I will mention one thing, which was the reduction of capital. As you know, during the year, we reduced our capital from 2 billion authorized shares to 200 million. The reason that it was at 2 billion in the first place relates back to the structure necessary for the merger transaction back in 2018. And that became historic, and it became a burden. Unfortunately, it's necessary to get shareholder approval for a reduction of authorized under Nevada statute. So it took some time, and ultimately we reduced it by 90% to 200 million. Now, some questions have come up as to why wasn't it reduced further than that. My answer is very simple. As a public company transitioning to a listed exchange with a lot of plans and announced, and others which will be announced subsequently, we need capital. And I think because we have to go back and ask our shareholders for approval every time we change our authorized capital, if we undershot on the authorized capital target, then we're just going to look foolish later when we need to raise capital to expand the business. So our legal advice was that this is a good number, and he was comfortable with it. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm comfortable with it as well. So that was just one point I wanted to make, because I'm sure that someone would have raised that question at some point during the call.
Mm-hmm. Another question, Niels?
Yes, let me have a look.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We have, as I said, we've been in discussion with Nasdaq. We're ongoing discussions with Nasdaq. They're very positive about what we can do. And I am aware of the price targets for listing on Nasdaq. And I'm fairly certain that you know, whatever it takes, we will get listed. Whether that means that that there needs to be some adjustment, some sort of adjustment in the stock price before that listing takes place. That happens to most companies transitioning to an exchange. So yes, we are determined that this company be listed. We won't be deterred by the fact that you know, the stock price needs to be at a certain level. I think once the audit is completed, a lot of the uncertainty which hangs around an alternative reporting structure will vanish. Well, it has to, because it becomes an audited company, so under PCAOB. So I think that will help our stock price, excuse me, and ultimately, whatever, as I said, whatever it takes to get listed, we will make sure we are, because that will benefit our shareholders and everybody else. Are there any more questions?
I don't see any more questions. Let's give another minute, and I think we can close here if there are no more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is it.
Well, I hope either I gave a very convincing explanation, or people fell asleep and decided not to listen. But I think ultimately, you know, we want to communicate. If you have any questions, if it's not on this webinar, then please, you know, contact us and let us know what you need to know, because that's our job, to keep informed. It's an exciting time, and we want you to be kept abreast of what's going on. It's going to be a very good year, I believe. And thank you for your support, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Bye.